I'm not the only CIO who's feeling like it's a whole new job and it's a whole new world. The world is different. The world changed. We woke up one morning and everything was different from one day to the next.
Where the hell do we even start?
We said, let's go bottom up and top down. The bottom up was about enabling chaos. So we know we got upwards of 97% of real adoption, of people using it multiple times a day. Most of the people that I lead, that I manage, are more technical than me, they're cleverer than me, they're more capable than me.
All right, so I'm joined today by Chily Fachler. He is the CIO over at AppsFlyer, based in Israel, and has been doing a ton of work around AI. So I'm super excited about the conversation. Chily, thank you so much for joining.
It's lovely to be with you, Matt.
So I just wanted to jump in. Normally we'll start with background, but you had made some comments earlier about sort of being really, really invested in AI, and I think you guys are kind of knee deep in it at AppsFlyer. And your comment was around the idea that it seems like it's sort of reinventing sort of the world. Tell me a little bit about at AppsFlyer and how you're using AI right now. What's been transformational for you? What's been going on?
Yeah, so I think I'm not the only CIO who's feeling like it's a whole new job and it's a whole new world. And I think for everybody, not just for CIOs, the CIO specifically needs to kind of help transform the company. But I think everyone is feeling like the world is different. The world changed. We woke up one morning and everything was different from one day to the next. I think it's what differentiates this from anything else is just the mere speed of it. Yes, the scale is huge, probably bigger than anything we've seen before, but the sheer speed of how quickly the world has changed. And at AppsFlyer, we recognized it quite early. And I remember, when that day ChatGPT came out and everyone was like sharing it and sending out and stuff, making up poems and songs and stuff like that. And very soon after that, within a day or two, we were having a conversation saying, okay, this is going to change our world. How do we control it? How do we use it? How do we ensure that and started having conversations about, okay, it's really clever and it can do all these clever things, but what can it do that can make our world different? And I think a large part of that was our CEO saw it early doors
Mhm.
and really kind of started talking to us about, okay, we are going to have to transform. And there was a lot of support around the business, around the leadership of the business to say, we need to do something. And being in the privileged position of being the CIO at AppsFlyer meant that I was able to work together with the COO and say, okay, what are the things that we need to do? And then we started working around the strategy and what we need to do next.
So I'm super curious because you also mentioned, from your perspective, the CIO's job, and I think a lot of people would share the statement, but in its practical implication, this idea that the CIO's job is to help the organization, sort of merge into this new technology, right? And we saw this with cloud technology before, is sort of how do we get sort of moribund technologies into a more cloud first, sort of SaaS based,
Yeah.
layout. But in AI, it seems like so many more tendrils into the business. So I'm curious, how did you as the CIO and how did the IT organization at AppsFlyer, how did you drive that through the organization? Did you have seminars? Did you do train the trainers? How did you get it out there? Because so many people are struggling with this. Where the hell do we even start?
So firstly, you're quite right with the question. It's not the same as cloud. It's not the same as digital transformation for that exact reason. Cloud, it's only the CIO who's going to change that, right? It might come from the push, the incentive might come from other areas within the business, but it's naturally the CIO, the IT director, the infra team that is going to kind of move from on-prem to cloud. I think the same with the digital transformation in a sense. The digital becomes more of a commercial thing. I grew up in the industries of retail and e-commerce transformation and multi-channel transformation. And yes, that has to be driven very much from the business. But once again, the business cannot do it without you.
Mhm.
And the difference in AI is it's kind of democratized almost by its very nature. And therefore, it's something that has to be transformed from within and from everybody within the organization. And yet, I think that the IT and IS organizations, we have in our DNA and should have in our DNA the ability and the desire to take business need and find the art of the possible in terms of technology, understand what the business is trying to change, what are the problems we're trying to solve, and use technology to solve those problems. Now, that being the case, when AI comes along, you say, well, who better to do it? Now, because in this situation, it's again democratized and people can do their own thing, that means that it's done in a very different way to the way
Mm,
we've traditionally done other transformations. But I think it's still our responsibility. So you asked me what we did. So
yeah.
initially, we kind of played with it. We looked at different tools. We tried to understand what works, what doesn't. Um, and eventually, we got to a point after a few months where we said, okay, let's bring all the decision makers in the business together. We we set up an offsite. We had the entire board and kind of uh, internal board, the executive board, all the C levels, all the decision makers, put them in a room and said, right, what are the things that we think we can change? Where are the areas that we can make a difference? And we came up with a bunch of things. Know your customer, for example. A large part of the go-to-market team is all about understanding the customer, knowing the customer, whether it's still a lead, an opportunity, or a customer that we're working with already. Understand them properly. Go into a meeting, go into a QBR, go into a sales pitch. Really understand who you're speaking to. We identified that as something that AI can help us to do. We identified a bunch of other areas around processes, around procurement, around financial processes, etc. We said, okay, AI, we think can help us do this. But then we said, and after a lot of discussion and to and fro, that a lot of what we want to do, we don't yet know what we want to do. It's a kind of unknown unknowns, right?
Okay.
The
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that we don't know yet. So we went for a two-tier strategy. We said, let's go bottom up and top down. The bottom up was about enabling chaos, saying to the business, look, you want to play, you want to learn, we want you to learn. We want you to become AI enabled, we want you to become AI powered and eventually AI native. And how do we do that? By just allowing you to play, saying, here's the tools that you can use, ensuring the security behind that was, again, that's our responsibility to make sure it's secure, but ensuring that there's guardrails and security, etc., etc. But use the tools that you want to use. Tell us what tools you want to use and start playing. So we came up with a deal with thing that worked for us, that worked for them, and we had all of every single person at AppsFlyer using OpenAI, and we told them play, do whatever you need to do, build GPTs, build. There wasn't agents yet, but we weren't in the area of skills yet. But build processes with AI to help you do your job. And we weren't measuring, and we weren't saying this is the job we want you to do better, and these are the use cases that we said. You go build, you play, you build. At the same time, we worked very closely with L&D, and we actually trained people to be builders. We trained 250 builders in our first year. Now that's a lot of builders. Now
Can I ask
we
a question just on that one? So you brought in your learning and development team in order to like spool up and sort of bring up that AI capability. Did you develop your own course? Did you use something from OpenAI? How did that work? Because that's something that
okay.
so many people are
So we
struggling with.
we did multiple things around this. And remember, we're still on the kind of bottom up area, right? So this is around getting people to use it. Firstly, when I say we brought in the L&D team, we have an amazing L&D team who brought themselves in, right? So they at the same time that I would love to take full responsibility for this, but I can't because they're an incredible L&D team, and they said we know we are going to. This is our life's work for the next 2, 3, 4 years, is
Okay.
to make people AI enabled and AI powered. So we worked together very, very close. The handshake was very close, hand in glove. We worked with them. We brought in external trainers. We brought a fabulous external trainer to go and train, and she went around the world to all our different offices to train on the basics of OpenAI, the basics of Gemini, the basics of AI generally. And we did those training. We also did a training, like I said, for the builders. So we took
Yeah.
250 people from different departments, handpicked to say, you are going to become AI builders. On top of that, we got, as part of our negotiation with the OpenAI provided trainers themselves. to train us how to build GPTs, how to use OpenAI in the best possible way. We did the same with Slack, for example, when we started using Slack AI as well. And that's look, these companies really want you to use their AI tools. It's
Mhm.
in their interest, and therefore, when you work closely with a vendor and you say, "Look, we want to use your tools. You want us to use your tools. Help us," and they do help. They do, and we had lots of sessions from them, and then also using external trainers as well to train us in the things that are specific to AppsFlyer, because
Okay.
you can't expect OpenAI or Slack or Gemini or Google to know your specifics, but we brought external trainers for that. So that was the kind of bottom up, and the measurement of that was all about adoption. Now, there's a there's a core flaw in that, because if you're measuring adoption and someone is using it to kind of search the web or
Make
get
a
recipes,
recipe for dinner and stuff like this. Yeah, yeah,
you're not gonna pick that up unless you really try hard to pick it up. And the truth is, we say we don't care. Use it for your recipes, use it for your own because the more you're using it, the more you see the power of it, the more you're going to use it for your day-to-day activities. And that's what we believe has happened. Again, it's very hard to measure. We'll get to measurement, but measurement is the hardest thing about AI,
yeah,
I think. To actually
yeah.
measure success is one of the hardest things. But we know we got upwards of 97% of real adoption, of people using it multiple times a day.
Mhm.
And that was our bottom up strategy. Our top down strategy, what we called the atom strategy, is we went to all the different business units and we said, what are your atoms? We defined an atom as a core activity that department does. So whether it's,
Okay.
let's say, in marketing, it might be SEO and demand generation. In finance, it may be invoice matching or
Good, I'm sure you.
procurement or whatever it was. We said these are your atoms. Identify the 3 or 4 main atoms you have in your department. Select 50% of them, and for those 50%, we want you to target AI enablement, AI empowerment on those atoms.
Okay.
And then it was a matter of selecting it, selecting use cases and working with them, hand again, strong handshake, together with the teams to understand what are those use cases and get them to start building those use cases with us, um, with AI tooling.
Can I ask a question about that? So you've got team members of your own kind of going into like, finance, and they're looking at it going, okay, quarter close, we're going to AIify it. This is one of the things at Fixify that we've done tremendously is like our quarter close is strongly, like AI processing and stuff like this. But one of the things I'm interested in is how did your team figure out, okay, that's a good use of AI versus, oh, that's a really bad use? Because one of the things, I mean, success rates for these things are all over the map, right? And one of the things that I've noted is I've talked tons of companies and they have everyone has these war stories of like, well, we tried to AIify this one thing and it turned out that was just the worst idea one conceived of because we didn't understand the tech and how it really worked. Did you guys have sort of a rubric or how did you decide like, okay, yeah, that like let's put AI there first versus like AI over there? Maybe we need a human there. How did you do that? How'd you think about that?
So look, I think let's be honest. I think any company that will tell you that they have fully measured and benchmarked every use case that they've done in AI, and that it's just not possible. So
Mhm.
firstly, it's changing so quickly. Something that might not have been a kind of a target for an AI solution last year or 6 months ago even is a target today.
Mhm.
And therefore it's very difficult to say what worked and what didn't work, and we had to be quite reactive in the way that we looked at it. So we identified these atoms and said, all right, these are the things that we think we can work with AI. Some of them fell flat and didn't work. Some of them we knew were working well, but we can't measure the impact necessarily.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
others worked and we could see the impact straight away. We saw a general impact that there's lots of nuisance variables, but we know that after we started really pushing AI, uh, the key indicators of the company improved, both
Okay.
in terms of top line and bottom line. And therefore, you can't say for sure it's because of the AI, but you get a feeling and you say, okay, we feel like we're more efficient. We feel like we're doing more without necessarily investing more in terms of whether it's people or tools, and therefore there's that feeling. But then there were certain use cases where we knew and we were able to measure.
Yeah. So on that front though, this notion, and so this is the other thing is, so you know that there was that MIT report that came out that said like 95% of the things that failed or something, like it was like a ridiculously high stat. And I looked at another study that came out recently, and I want to say it was from McKinsey, but don't quote me on that, where they said that actually of the projects at the companies they studied, 71% of them succeeded, but of those, about 60% had had a previous iteration that failed. And so one of the things that keeps coming up for me is like there are organizations that are open to that, that are organizationally or like culturally open to, we're going to try something and it might not work. We're going to iterate. We're going to fail. We're going to do stuff. We might not be able to measure it to start with, but we're going to figure it out. And then there's organizations and like John Doerr looking at you, where it's like, if it can't be measured with the KPI, we're not going to do it. And like, it better succeed or somebody's getting fired. At AppsFlyer, was experimentation part of the culture to start with, or was this kind of a new muscle for you guys? Like, how did that, how did that feel?
We're the first type of organization there, and that's why I spoke to you about the chaos strategy, because even though that was the bottom up strategy, not the top up, but there was an understanding that we were going to create chaos, and there was an understanding that things wouldn't necessarily work straight away. But the aim, the target, was to ensure that people become more and more AI enabled, more and more understanding of what AI can do for them, and that we as the kind of professionals that are providing solutions become that as well. Now, the top down strategy, most of the use case that we came up with at Atoms, I won't say most failed, but a lot just didn't really take off,
Okay.
right? Because it was early, it was new, it wasn't sure. But then we kind of started focusing more. We said, right, what are the big needle movers? What do we think we can really change? And people then already a little bit more educated. Remember, the kind of bottom up approach has started working, because now people are going themselves. Oh wait, hold on. What if we do it this way? What if we do it that way? We had one department, for example, that said, all right, all of our analysts, we're going to train them to be super builders,
Mhm.
right? And those analysts, data analysts, become super builders, and they went in and built 3 or 4 real serious use cases together with our team. Actually, some were together with our team, and some they did themselves, where they built 3 or 4 serious use cases that are measurably changing the efficiency in that department. And then at the same time, we said as a company, and we spoke about KYC, know your customer earlier. That's a theme that continued throughout the strategy and throughout the execution of the strategy, and eventually we looked in and you spoke about how um, IT teams, did a cloud transformation. So
Yeah.
so here, what is the part that we need to do, right?
Okay.
The data, the MCP, the connectivity to the data. When AI first came out, it was like a lot of the leaders couldn't understand, why can't we just, type in, show
Yeah.
me the last 10 people who churned? Well,
Yeah.
because that's not the way I owe. But why doesn't it work like that? If it can go onto the internet and find me, a piece of data that's so random that, no one's looked at in 10 years, and
Yeah.
why can't it find me something in my own Salesforce?
Yeah.
And it's a good question. And the answer is a technological answer. And that's where we come in. And that's where we said, so we built an MCP. We decided, after trying building it ourselves, we decided to use Claude as the kind of as the model that interrogates the MCP. We built a KYC skill that's that's company wide, rolled it out for 300-400 people, um, so that today, before anybody goes into any kind of meeting with any customer,
Mhm.
uh, they access the skill via Claude, and it prepares them. And that was a use case that was built alongside the business, knowing that it was going to be impactful if we were able to do it, with lots of iterations, some that failed, until we got it right. And when we got it right, we decided, okay, now's the time to really invest, and invest in more licenses, and invest in and roll it out. We rolled it out. We first demonstrated it at the sales kickoff, and then rolled it out to the full go to market teams, and it's been tremendously successful. So I think that there's, again, I can tell you lots of war stories. I can tell you lots of use cases that just didn't come off the ground, or if they did, it ended up being used by 1 or 2 people, and not really kind of adding proper value. But even those, I think, have taken us to a place where we now more capable and more able and more creative in what we're building going forward.
And it's super awesome. I want to pivot a little bit, perhaps like, a little bit of a left turn, but one of the things we always talk about on this show is sort of like career paths and in particular like leadership styles, because what you're talking about right here is leading a large organization through the choppy waters of massive technology transfer. And you don't just sort of like show up one day and go, "Hey, my name's Chili and I'm going to lead this organization." Right? Like, I mean, this you were building through this. Tell me a little bit about how you got in this seat. Like, what were the sort of the formative moments in your career? Walk me through a little bit about how you got
Okay, so I didn't come through the typical way, although speaking to lots of CIOs over the years, I don't know if there is a typical way. I think that everyone comes through a different route. I didn't come through the technology route. I was never a developer, programmer. I came through as a business analyst, and then a project manager, and then a program manager, and a program director, managing like big programs. Um, I guess my skill, if you can call it that, or at least the area that I was good at, was being that translation layer between the business and the technology.
it? Okay.
Even in my early career, so I was the guy who was able to understand the business process, so the problems that you're trying to solve, and be able to hold a legitimate enough conversation with the technologist who didn't really speak the same language as
Mhm.
the commercial guys, and to be able to be that person in the middle. And I built my career based around that, and I built my early career based around that. But I always wanted to do more, and I think I was always kind of ambitious to do more, and really driven to do more. I was lucky enough to be involved in a very large project, and I'm going back 20 years now, for a large retailer in the UK, where we put in Reserve and Collect, which was the first major multi-channel digital transformation for a major retailer in the UK. And I was the project manager. There was the business stakeholder was we enjoyed working with each other. We kind of saw eye to eye on a lot of things, and it was very successful because of that very strong handshake that we had. When he moved over to become an e-commerce director in another company, he kind of introduced me to the CEO and said, "Look, this is your IT director. This is the guy who understands how technology can shape a business." And I was lucky. I that was my first leadership role. Uh, it was it was an IT director role that was responsible for IT and applications. Um, and over the years, and that was a company that needed a digital transformation and needed to transform, and I had big gaps, and I needed to fill those gaps, but managed to do some of that on the job and some of that in my time, but really that's how I kind of got into IT leadership. I I I speak to lots of other CIOs and IT directors that more come from the technical side, and their gaps were more, on the business side and understanding the business. But I think that the common thread is this ability and this desire to help businesses and to understand the business enough to help them understand what is their pain and how do we cure their pain with technology.
It's a fascinating thing. Like, I've talked to a lot of CIOs who, when they do come up through the technical path, there's this sort of moment, usually around the VP level or the director level, where like kind of
Yeah.
the scales fall from their eyes and they look and they go, "Oh, actually, this is about business. I mean, technologies are like a neat antecedent to my job, but like, kind of who cares? Like, there's some other things going on." It sounds like sort of, and you sort of mirror a number of other conversations I had where it's like, well, if you came in through the business side, you don't, it's not as much of a rude awakening. But I am curious, if you were to go back and you were saying like, okay, sitting where you are right now, and
Yeah.
you were going to give advice to a younger person who's coming up, right? Maybe they're in their first or second IT job and they're looking at things going like, well, at some point I might want to be a CIO, I might want to be in the C-level seat. Like, what would you tell them to do, or what would you warn them about? Something that you might have wanted to do differently, or something that you think would be really important to make that climb easier.
So I think someone is coming up towards leadership and towards being a CIO. I think they need to ask themselves, why do I want to be a CIO? What? It's a very very specific area. It's a very exciting area, by the way. I think other than HR and finance, maybe it's the only team, it's the only area where you have to know and understand everything about the business, and much more so than those other two, because you have to have a deep understanding because you really are enabling them with everything that they do. Um, So number one, do you want that? Are you driven by helping a business to succeed and become more efficient? And do you love technology? And
Mhm.
if the answer to all three is there, and this is what you want to do, so how do you get there? I think is number one by avoid the kind of politics and the game playing and all of that. That's yeah, it might get you there, but it'll get you there for all the wrong reasons, and it won't keep you there. The way that you get there, I think, is by demonstrating to a business that you understand the problems they're trying to solve, you understand where the gaps are, you're commercially astute, and you also understand the art of the possible in terms of how technology can enable those those challenges, and to demonstrate that. And I think whether you're coming from the technology side or you're coming from the business side, if you want to be a CIO, you have to be able to demonstrate that. So when the business looks and says, "Look, we need to change, we need to be enabled, we need the tools," then you the natural address for that because they understand that you have that empathy. So my biggest advice to someone trying to get into this kind of game and into the is show the empathy, put your head down, work on understanding the business, really work on understanding being commercially astute and understanding the commercial needs of the business, and then try and use your skills around technology enablement to help the business succeed.
At the risk of misapplying something you said earlier, it does seem to come back to that know your customer idea. I've talked to a number of other leaders who end up in the situation. I find myself in this position too, where you sit down and you're like, my, as I make that leap into the C level, I now have a team of people who are my customers, and like I need to be a little less focused this way and a little more focused this way. So I need to go and make sure that my different, like I know exactly what they need and this kind of thing, and like that I have to say it is one of the things as I deal with lots of technologists, it's hard if you're coming from the technology perspective because you've spent your whole life, the value was in knowing the technology, and now it's like, "Oh, no, it's
That's
actually
right.
knowing in the people,"
Look,
which
that's right. And like I said, my biggest gap was technology. It still is, to be honest. And I'm spending a lot of time now with AI, really trying to understand the technology because
yeah.
I grew up with the ERPs and the CRMs.
Yeah, yeah,
For
yeah, yeah,
10, 15 years, I haven't felt the need to get into the detail of that
yeah,
because, you've got the right people there, you've got good leaders, you've got with AI, it's different because nobody really understands the technology, and therefore
yeah.
I'm becoming more technical myself. But my gap was always the technology. That coming from the business, that was kind of easier for me. And I agree with you that people that come from the technology side, the risk is to fall too much into the solution rather than the problem you're trying to solve.
Mhm,
And if
okay,
you
yeah.
come into a conversation with the solution, then you're missing the point. Because what you're trying to do is sell a solution that is not, we're not you're right that our stakeholders are our customers, but we're not, ultimately, we're there to be, flexible for them. We're not there to say, "Here's our solution, take it or leave it." It's really about and that's where technologists sometimes struggle. I'm not saying always, but a lot of technologists are very commercially astute and but they sometimes struggle where they're coming in with an idea of how it should be. You're starting to build the architecture before you've understood the problem that you're trying to solve.
Yeah. Yeah, no. This so I'm smiling because so often I see this where it's like you've got this really, really talented technology team and they keep showing up and bouncing off the hull because at the end of the day, it's people. Like you're dealing with people. And so if they don't like your solution, they're not going to use it. It doesn't matter how good it is, right? Like it may well be, the world's best solution. And they're never ever going to use it as a general thing. So yeah, I'm curious. I mean, the last question, and we always ask people this. If you were to recommend one resource, a book, a podcast, or something like this, like to either come up to speed or something that you've read in the last year or so that's really helped you, what would it be?
That's a very easy one for me. And if you would ask any of my leadership team, they would answer it without thinking. You could wake them up in the middle of the night and they would tell you.
Okay.
It's Five Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni.
Patrick Lencioni. Sure. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
It's my Bible.
Okay.
My entire approach, my playbook is it, at the end of we haven't spoken about that. We spoke about AI, we spoke about technology and enablement. What we haven't spoken about is people and leadership. And I think it's all about that. At the end of the day, if you're managing a big team, it's all about the people. I spoke about the fact that I'm not a big technology. Most of the people that I lead, that I manage, are more technical than me. They're cleverer than me. They're more capable than me, and really, I see my role as ensuring that they are getting what they need to from a career point of view. That they're building their career every day that they're working with me. That they are empowered, that they are enabled, and that's what it's all about. And I believe, and especially, and again, it depends on scale, etc. But if you're managing teams of 30, 40, certainly 50 and above, you're managing other managers, you're managing other leaders. Leadership is a lonely place, and you want to feel that you have a team and a group that is able to work with each other to build something special. And therefore, the five dysfunctions of a team. What Firstly, there's principles in there that I think are absolutely, you to me, they're like the basic, the standards, the building of trust, the ability to have positive conflict,
Mhm.
and then to take ownership, and the fact that it's in a kind of a pyramid. So you cannot have that conflict if you don't have trust,
Mhm.
and you will not take real ownership and accountability if you don't have that positive conflict, if you don't feel like you've been part of the conversation. So these are basic principles that I think are not just for leadership teams, that are basic principles that work in all relationships, and certainly in business relationships. But I think for leadership teams, it also means that you're building something where, if somebody, and this is in the book as well, if somebody asks you, what is your team? Now, let's assume you're the IT director or you're the CISO, and your answer is, my team is the security team, or my team is the IT team, right? Then it means you don't have a good leadership team. Because if you're part of a leadership team, your team is the leadership team. That is the team that helps each other. That's the team that challenges each other. That's the team that takes their hats off and they walk into the room and says, I'm now not the CISO, I'm part of the leadership team of IS. I'm
Yep.
not the applications director, I'm part of the leadership team of IS. And I think that when you get that going and ticking really, really, really well,
Yeah.
right, then you have something that's magical, really. And I think then it passes on to the rest of your department, to the rest of the people that are working for you, because they see that trust, they see that positivity, they see how people are able to challenge each other, and it's healthy. And I think it works really well. So that's my Bible. Anyone who works for me, they know before day one they have to read that, and they'll get
Right.
tested on it. And it's something that I truly believe in.
It's a super awesome reference, and I think you're absolutely right, and that the tone of an organization comes from the top, and so
Yeah,
if your leadership team is aligned and collaborative, then I've seen that trickle out as well, so it's
no question.
very useful. Thank you so much for taking the time. I really, really appreciate it, and it was a great conversation. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Matt. It's been great talking to you.